And we had another set of exciting matches in round 11. Started off on Thursday night at Marvel Stadium with the Swans continuing on their train that they're on at the moment. Then the draw on Friday night, which we'll get into later, the controversy. And then you had the huge game between GWS and Geelong. GWS getting that slight upset at GMHBA. They continue their run there. Dreamtime gave us a closer result than we thought. And then we had the Hawks, who seem to be flying on Sunday. Welcome back to ChatChit.
Let's jump straight into the top 5. Now, I just want to give a shout out to someone. I know we're not doing honorable mentions, but I'm going to do it today. Lecalier had an awesome last quarter and game. I think he took 7 intercept marks in that game, 10's the record, and really brought the game home for his team in that last quarter. Real who was the Swans legend that took that Leo Barry-esque at the end there with just continuous intercept marks at the end of the game.
Lecalier, you star.
But yeah, my number 5 was Alex Pearce for this week. They got the draw against Collingwood. He was immense at the back. He's been really, really good this season, having an all-Australian season. Not only did he have a great game at the back, he went forward and actually kicked a really important goal for his team at the end. Gave a really nice interview afterwards. Just want to give him a shout out. 5th best player for me for the round.
I love that call. I always love appreciation for the defenders, which you don't show enough. So I love I'm turning him a little bit.
That could be my first defender I've had in my top 5 the entire season.
And I actually have a different defender in number 5.
Okay.
Alex Pearce was incredible. I think this player was just as good. James Sicily.
Oh, I like it. He was really good today.
He was amazing today.
Did you see that bullet of a kick from about 60 metres away? Went about 7 metres up in the air?
And it was way across his body?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the way he does that across his body. Yeah, James Sicily, it was the combination of defence, where we saw him have just that dominant presence in defence, like we saw him do last year. But the combination of that with his kicking ability and ability to just launch kicks into the corridor, onto the wing, except just onto a dime, was just so huge for Hawthorn to get them this upset win against Brisbane, which wasn't even that much of an upset with how Hawthorn are playing recently, but Brisbane coming off a 100-point win. James Sicily was the leader to take them down.
100%. I like that. I'm surprised I didn't actually pick that up in my top 5. My number 4 was Jordan Dawson. Now, I think on another day, against any other opponent bar a couple in the league, I'd put him higher up. But against a pretty hapless West Coast today, and yeah, fair play Adelaide. The West Coast have been flying recently. But yeah, he got 2 goals, 32 disposals at 80%, 2 goal assists, 11 score involvements, and was real captain's performance today.
That first quarter, he was just about everywhere.
Yeah, but 2 goals, 12 disposals.
And a goal assist as well.
First quarter. I remember a commentator said something in the 3rd quarter. He's like, how is Jordan Dawson at the back, but also at the front? They've got 2 at the same.
Jordan Dawsons.
Yeah,
on the field.
You'll see him taking a kick out, but suddenly he's taking a mark in the forward 50.
The work rate's phenomenal.
It's immense. You just love to see it, especially from a captain gets the team going.
Should have been in my top 5, but I wanted to show appreciation to guys who maybe played in some more exciting games.
Fair enough.
I think Adelaide, they just tore apart West Coast.
I did. I just wanted to give
Dawson
appreciation. I only do it if they're against Richmond or North. I don't pick players.
But you can only play the opposition in front of you.
Exactly.
Dawson played as well as he could have. In number 4, I've got Patrick Cripps.
Okay, I'm at number 2.
Do you want to talk about Cripps?
No, you tell us about it.
It was just a really dominant performance, just doing all the grunt work and the exciting work too. Kick to goal, was creative, 11 score involvements while also having
13 clearances.
13 clearances, 16 contested
Only
possessions.
in 4th.
Yep.
Wow,
okay. And in the midst of all of that, at 83% disposal efficiency, he was epic and led his team against Gold Coast, who continue to just not be able to win away from home.
Was it 11 in a row on the bounce? They can't win away?
You know how they have those little witty articles on the AFL website? One of my favourite little puns is that they said Gold Coast's away blues continue. I thought that was actually... Had to show some appreciation for whoever wrote that article.
I like it. But yeah, if Carlton, if Cripps and Walsh are firing, you're probably going to lose. But yeah, I like the big Iron number 2. I'll go into my number 3 was Jordan Ridley.
I got him at number 3 as well.
Okay, I'll talk about him for a second. First game back.
Another defender. This is huge.
I know. I don't know what I'm doing. But 8 intercept marks. He had 8 at the start of the 4th quarter. He was on track to break the record at one time. Which was 10. He kicked a goal as well. Had 30-something touches. Was everywhere in that defence. First game back. He had a half a game in the VFL last week. Looks like he hasn't missed any footy. Exactly like the player that the Essendon talked about that they were missing at the back. A guy that can take intercept marks and set up the attack at the same time. He's a great kick, really composed. Similar to Tom Stewart, I'd say. Just doesn't lose the ball, always picks the right option, great decision maker, and being so long out of footy to come straight back in firing like that, which is really good to see.
Couldn't agree more. Had him at 3 as number 3 as well. Then you've said your number 2. My number 2 was Max Gawn.
Okay, I didn't have him on my list actually.
Gosh, he dominated Rowan Marshall so hard. I don't know how many clearances Max Gawn got. I'll pull it up. But yeah, the amount of times he just took it out of the ruck, and when he didn't take it out of the ruck, he got twice as many hitouts. 10 clearances. Twice as many hitouts as Rowan Marshall. A goal. 27 disposals with 18 contested at 88% disposal.
88%, that's crazy, actually.
That's the crazy part with all the contested footy, and led the game in score involvements too.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, fair enough.
It was just it was about as dominant a ruck display as you'll get, and we've seen, how many of those performances have we seen out of Max Gawn this year? Too many. It's kind of funny.
It's just an expectation. Maybe that's why I didn't put him in.
Yeah, that's the kind of...
He's just played to expectation. He's that good.
It's like sometimes when Bont gets 3 goals and 30 and he misses out on the top 5 because it's just what you expect from him.
100%. Now I'm going to go to my number 1. I know he's going to be your number 1 as well. We said it as soon as the game finished on Thursday night. There's absolutely no way anyone's going to have a better performance than this bloke.
I said it at 3/4 time.
Chad Warner. He's kicked 4 goals and had, 25 touches.
And might have got Mark of the Year.
He might have got Mark of the Year, but it'll be a popularity contest, and Jamie Elliott will get it in the end. But this guy is one of the best players in the competition, and he's having fun while doing it.
And let's just say, I had him at number 1 last week as well. He had a 3-goal, 28 disposal, 14 score involvement game
3-goal
assists against Carlton last week.
Oh yeah,
and then this week it was 4 and 25 with 3-goal assists.
I can't. That third.
But those are just the stats.
Wow.
The thing is, Chad Warner is a guy who usually performs better than his stats because it's the fact that he's so damaging with each touch, and he's so damaging with each effective touch, and even the ineffective touches he's breaking out of stoppage, and he's doing all this work that doesn't show up on the stats because he's just so freakish. And the fact that he's having these ridiculous statistical displays on top of that, gosh, he's playing like the best player in the league, and there's people saying it all over the media.
I'm absolutely loving it. We've currently probably got the best 2 players in the league
at the moment
in the same midfield at the Swans.
alongside the guy who came 4th in the Brownlow medal last year, and alongside the guy leading tackles in the competition.
Yeah, we're absolutely firing, and it's great because he's getting recognition now because he's putting stats up on the board. But he's already had his record goal-kicking season at this point, and we're not even halfway through. So yeah, absolutely unbelievable season from here. We've got a Brownlow predicted that Sam's done, which we're going to talk about in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, we'll move on to our next segment, which is one player every team needs to sign.
So we're going to go around for each team, alphabetical order, and we're going to talk about one player that we think would really improve that team. So, for example, I'll start off with Adelaide. I've got Jacob Wiedering.
Okay, I had Lockie Whitfield for Adelaide, and
interesting.
And I'll explain. I think they're really lacking a damaging halfback. I think they've got the key backs coming through, and like Michael Annie and Keane and Nate Curvis has really started to pop up out of nowhere, and Hinge. And I just think they've sent Laird back a couple times to play halfback. You might not really want Dawson to play at halfback. A guy like Lockie Whitfield really setting up that attack could turn them into the team that they were last year and the best scoring team. So that's why I've gone with a halfback and Lockie Whitfield.
I like that. I think while they have those guys coming through, I don't know if any of those guys... like Michelani's a smaller defender. In terms of Keane and maybe Mitch Hinge, I don't know if any of those guys are going to turn into dominant key backs. And I think that they lack a bit of presence back there in the key back department, and that's why I've gone with Jacob Wiedering.
Well, I think Jacob Wiedering is going to improve any team. You could probably have picked him for any team here.
Yeah, go with Brisbane now.
Brisbane, okay. I've said Jake Waterman for Brisbane, and I've said it for a couple of reasons. I think Hipwood... I don't think Hipwood is up to the level to play where Brisbane want to be. I think Brisbane are lacking a big key forward that's just going to sit in the forward line and take big hangers.
Joe Danaher.
Joe Danaher has been getting up the ground a lot. He needs a guy to kick the ball to, and I've thought about it. Jake Waterman he's coming into a bit of form. He's building up a bit of value. I think maybe he might want to move. Might want to just give one more push towards the back end of his career. I think maybe Brisbane might be the team to do it.
I'm not looking for realistic signings. I'm just thinking theoretically. For Brisbane, I've taken a different route. I reckon their midfield, while they have champions there, and Lachie Neale, Josh Dunkley, Hugh McCluggage is a good player. Like, I don't think the midfield's not performing in the metrics, and it's also not passing the eye test. They're getting dominated by strong midfields, and I think it's because they don't have a spark in there. They don't have a young guy that's got some explosiveness.
Ashcroft?
They don't have him in there right now, and he's still going to take some time to develop. I've gone with Luke Davies-Uniacke.
Okay, I like it.
I reckon he's someone to provide some energy and some burst out of that midfield. Where Neil and Dunkley, they're really good and they do great grunt work and they're clean, but they don't have that youth and explosiveness in there.
I like it.
Moving on to Carlton, I think in their forward line, we know that they have the Twin Towers, Curnow and Mackay.
I have a bad feeling we might say the same player here.
I've gone Isaac Rankin.
Okay, I've gone Tom Papley.
Really same vibe.
Really similar.
Yeah.
I've got him one. He's been linked there several times in the last few years. I think we're going to say the same thing. It's exactly what they're missing.
They don't get production out of their small
real
forwards.
Star on the ground to really pick it up because they bring it to ground so often. Like guys like Corey Durden, Owies. They're just
Jack Martin.
They need a guy that's going to be consistent small forward that's
consistently getting goals.
That can actually win a game for them.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, no, I like that. I like that we identified the same position. Moving on to Collingwood, I've got a Josh Dunkley. I think they
don't have enough old midfielders.
Okay, I've said this for a few reasons. Whoa, I said this for a few reasons.
This is literally just Tom Mitchell.
One, that plays a part in it. One, they need a guy that's going to a really big body in there. Degoe's been playing a bit of time forward. That's going to get the ball out to the likes of Dagos. Two, he has a podcast with Tom Mitchell. They're great mates. I think he's going to love to play. He would love to play with him again. Be great for the podcast. You know, like being in the same place, could be roommates again. So I've gone Josh Dunkley for Collingwood.
That's an awful call. They have about 7 30-plus-year-old midfielders in there already. I've gone Mitch Lewis. They don't have a key forward that consistently scores goals. And Brady Myercheck is good at bringing the ball to ground. He's a great effort player. He doesn't consistently score. He has less goals than Chad Warner this year by a significant amount.
I like your Warner a lot.
So I've gone someone like Mitch Lewis, a developing young forward that is going to be strong for a while. I like that for Collingwood. For Essendon, I reckon they're flying everywhere right now, aren't they? So it's hard to really find a weakness in their game at the moment. But I think in their midfield, if you're getting granular, they have a lot of exciting guys around there, but Zach Merritt could have some more support in terms of experienced guys and guys that can go both ways. So I've gone Jack Steele.
Dunkley?
I've gone Jack Steele. They're not going to get Jack Steele, but I'm saying an experienced midfielder that can bring some strength and some experience in there.
I've gone a little bit different to you. I've looked at their ruck situation.
Fair enough.
And I've gone someone young who's not a big name. No, I've gone Ned Moyle. The second ruck for the Gold Coast. We've seen him play a couple of games this year. He's loved by the Gold Coast midfielders. He played the game against Geelong. I'm fairly sure they talked about it after the game where he had a really, really good breakout game and he's great. He sort of reads the midfielder really well. He's obviously playing second ruck to Witts, who isn't going anywhere anytime soon. I think you get him pretty cheap. I've tried to make it somewhat realistic, but I think he's a guy that could play under Goldstein for however long he's got left and then really come in and be that number one ruck.
Keep in mind, this is not a trade talk segment. If for Freo, there's a very clear weakness in their team, which is that they are super solid down back. They have an exciting midfield. Which
key have you picked?
They don't kick goals. I've gone Charlie Curnow because they need a drastic change.
I went Jesse Hogan.
A few things. The two Coleman medal favourites.
A few things. He's from Perth. He might want to go back there. So I've been a little bit realistic here. As in he's played at Freo before, didn't really work out for him. Might want to go see the family a bit more.
I think it says a lot about the Freo forward line that we've picked the two Coleman medal favourites. They need drastic change in their forward line.
Josh Tracy is not going to do it for them, especially if they're looking. They've got top 8, top 4 aspirations.
Agreed. So for Gold Coast, I reckon they cannot get a win away from home. I don't know.
You skipped Geelong?
Oh, okay. Depends what. Oh, yeah. Okay. You go Geelong first.
I said LDU.
Oh, yeah. Whoever he said.
It's just like they need they're getting smashed in the midfield so often. They need a big body midfielder, someone with a bit of experience but not too old that can really run with the guy Tanner Bruin, Parfitt, O'Connor, Oishin, the younger guys, and really just try. I think LDU is good enough to lead a midfield.
Yeah. For being blunt, this current Geelong midfield is weak. It's one of the weakest 3 midfields in the competition, I reckon. And Geelong, as strong as they are in the forward line and as strong as they can be in defence when everyone's fit and firing, their midfield is not going to win a premiership. It's not going to make the top 4. You need a strong midfield. I reckon I've gone with any midfielder.
Any midfielder.
They don't have.
I think a ruckman could. They probably need a ruckman as well.
They do not have a star midfielder. I reckon their best midfielder this season has been Tanner Bruin, and he doesn't get close to cracking into the Swans 22 right now.
Yeah, true. It's been a big weakness for them. We'll move on to Gold Coast. I said Max Holmes for Gold Coast.
I've gone the exact same vibe. I've gone with Nick Blakey.
Yeah, so okay.
Some run
they
from
have
halfback.
they've got key forwards now. They've got Jed Walter, they've got King.
Yeah.
They've got a good forward.
They've
line.
got stuff developing.
They've got a really great midfield. They've got a good ruckman. They've got really good key backs. McAndrew coming through as well.
Oof.
But Flanders is not a damaging halfback.
He's not a damaging player.
They need a guy that could really break off halfback, and we've gone for the same sort of thing. I think I thought of Nick Blakey as well, but it's like a bit of speed, a bit of run off halfback.
How good was Max Holmes this week, by the way?
He was elite.
He was.
He's really good, and I think he's potentially leaving Geelong. I don't know if he signed a new contract, but his contract is coming up. I didn't think about that here, but I just thought of, similar to you, what you would have thought of, but just a guy that a bit of run off halfback.
Completely agree. For GWS, we mentioned quickly earlier, we didn't say what player we chose, but we said it's really tough because they are stacked all over the ground.
Yeah.
They've had some bad form, which they recovered this week, but they are stacked everywhere.
This was by far the hardest one to choose for me.
See, where I went here is I think they have one of the strongest forward lines in the league. I think they have the strongest defence in the league, possibly, personnel-wise. But in their midfield, they don't have anyone that gets more than 4.5 tackles per game.
Ooh.
They don't have, and when you look at the metrics, they do not dominate contested possessions. It's the one thing that they don't dominate on the metrics. I've gone with James Robo.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that.
Someone to go the other way,
Yeah.
to when their midfield's not firing, prevent the other midfield from firing.
I already like your pick more than my pick. So I've gone a bit different. I've gone a key forward. Okay. Now they have Jesse Hogan, but Cadman isn't consistent. I think he needs some time in and out of the in and out. No, he has not been consistent. He's not kicked a lot of goals. He's been good. Jake Riccardi, bar this most recent week, has not been good. I've gone Jamari Ugle-Hagan. I've just got a key forward, the guy that can play with Jesse Hogan. I couldn't think of anything else that needed to improve. But yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I much prefer your choice.
Thank you.
Move on to Hawthorn. Now what I've done with Hawthorn. I've said Jake Stringer on a 1-year deal.
He's thinking trade talk.
But no, not just because Jake Stringer's deal's coming to an end, but he is a different player when he's on a 1-year deal. I think Hawthorn, they're lacking that mid-size sort of guy that can play a bit taller. They've got the small forwards in Ginnivan and the Wizard in Nick Watson. They've got Lewis who's just injury prone, and hopefully he comes back. But I think they're lacking that mid to key forward that can really grab a game, and I've said Jake Stringer on a 1-year deal.
I've gone similar, but I've gone for a bit of youth because that's Hawthorn's age profile, and when they're trying to be good is in a few years. So I've gone with Ben King, but in a really similar idea of where they could improve.
That's really funny.
And what I don't. Oh, okay. So because that'll probably be his next pick.
Yeah.
But I think what you're doing here in terms of people whose contracts are coming to an end, we're on FIFA career mode, and you filtered by contract expiring in 6 months. So you always used to do.
I'm just looking for bargains over here. We'll move on to Melbourne next, and it's funny you said Ben King because I said Ben King for Melbourne.
And I've gone the exact same vibe. I've gone with Sam Darcy, a young key forward.
Yeah, they are crying out for a key forward, someone that can play with Fritsch. Fritsch is playing tall at the moment. He's not the big key forward target. He's really I think he's over-exceeded expectations for how well he's led this forward line in the past few years, and he really needs some help. He needs another target.
Yeah, Ben Brown and Tom McDonald have been on the way down for a while. They had Joel Smith, who looked so promising last year, and it's so sad for both him and for the team that hasn't worked out. But when it comes to just looking at the logistics of their team, they need to keep forward. So moving on to North Melbourne, I've gone with 19 players. I've said keep Sheasel, Larkey and Wardlaw, and scrap the rest of the list. I'll play. I was a good centre-half backman in my day, and I reckon I do a better job than Aiden Core.
Okay, I've got a similar vibe, but not that similar. I've said the entire GWS backline with the Swans tactics. And I'm brackets I put Jerry McGovern if we were actually going to do someone. But yeah, they're crying out for a defence. They're crying out for a lot of positions. This was actually really tough to do as well. Up there with GWS in terms of picking someone. So yeah, I've said the entire GWS backline because I think they need it. Moving on to Port Adelaide, I've said Will Hayward.
I love it.
I think they need a mid-sized forward. They've got the key forwards.
It's scary how alike we're thinking with these teams.
They've got the small forwards, but I think they're lacking Burn Jones is.
I don't think they have the small forwards. I think they have.
I like Willie Rioli.
I like Willie Rioli. I like Darcy Burn Jones, but they don't have a guy there that I think can connect from midfield to the forward line for one. And I don't think they have a guy that gets them a couple of goals a game. Willie Rioli has 16 goals for the season, and I had a look at this, and Burn Jones has 15. I've gone with Jade Gresham.
Fair.
Who I think
so
would add to the
similar
vibe
of player.
Yeah, but I think they're stronger elsewhere. But Port have a pretty strong list. They're now into third place on the ladder. They're doing well.
I like it. Moving on to Richmond, I've gone with Noah Anderson.
And I've gone with Noah Anderson as well.
So we thought the same thing. Okay, the reason why that wasn't such a surprise is we were talking about it a little bit before, and it was just we happened to both have Noah Anderson for Richmond. But yeah, Noah Anderson was born in Melbourne, which is a big thing. He's homesick. He wants to go back. I think they're crying out for any midfielder. They're someone like Taranto's good, but he's just a hat kick forward. He'll just get the ball.
That's so harsh.
I mean, come on, he goes at 50-60% each week. He'll get the clearances. He'll get the ball forward. That's great. That's good. But he needs someone that maybe he can give the ball to on the outside that's going to hit those forward targets. But yeah, you could have said a number of midfielders here, but I just look for a bit of speed on the outside.
Yeah, I think similar to Geelong, pretty much any midfielder, but I think Noah Anderson would be someone that is young and could be a bit of a young leader. Richmond needs some leadership.
And born in Melbourne. We'll move on to St Kilda, and I've gone a little bit of a different route with St Kilda, and I've said Nathan Buckley with St Kilda. I think they're crying out for a new coach. They can't kick more than 9 goals every week. They're a very boring team to watch.
Another 9-goal exactly performance.
Yeah, they've got damaging players. They've got a really damaging half-back line. Wangali Malira, Sinclair.
I reckon they have damaging personnel on their forward line. Mitch Owens, Anthony Caminiti, these are exciting guys. Max King and Jack Higgins, they score a lot of goals when they're given the opportunity.
I just want to say, honestly, you could have said, I just wanted a guy that's forward-thinking that could get the best out of these players, so I've gone with Nathan Buckley. Get him out of the pundits box and into the coaching box.
This could actually happen, but with Ross Lyon, everyone knows, we've seen it for decades, that he is a wonderful coach. He is a coach that leads teams to success, different types of teams in different ways, and he's an adaptable coach. It's just fascinating that he's not doing anything, seemingly, about these tactics that are not working whatsoever for this team, which has talent and can make finals. It's so confusing. But for St Kilda, I've gone Bailey Fritsch. Just, if Ross Lyon's not going to change, just chuck someone that gives them a better chance of scoring goals. Because Bailey Fritsch, he's just a bit of a goal machine.
The things you could do with that St Kilda team, they've got weapons all over the field.
They do.
Move on to the Sydney Swans. This one was tough as well, but I think there was one position that I identified as a potential weakness. It was a key back. We know Melican stepped up this year, but we want a guy that's maybe
I've gone a key back as well.
A bit more of an aura around him. I've gone Tom Barrass.
I've gone Harris Andrews.
So I've done this one. He's been linked to the Swans a couple of times before. We thought there was a chance that he was actually going to make his way over to the Harbourside City, but I just think he's exactly what we need next to Tom McCartan. Just a really big key defender that's going to take intercept marks. And we're extremely undersized defence, and I just think someone like him is going to be huge. But I love Harris Andrews as well.
Effectively, I wanted to write no one here because I am so unbelievably happy with everyone in this Swans team in this 22 right now. I'm very happy with guys that can't even crack into the 22. Your Robbie Foxes, your Braden Campbells. They're developing so nicely and playing a great role when they play. But if we're looking at a place where we could improve, it's the fact that we are undersized in our defence. But Lewis Melican and Tom McCartan and Dane Rampy and Nick Blakey, these guys have been doing a great job of making up for that lack of height and supporting each other. But I think we could improve in that way. For Bulldogs, I think they have a similar weakness, but it's a much more glaring weakness in that they don't have as strong key defenders. Liam Jones does not get enough support. He's a good intercept mark, but you don't have big guys crashing packs. And
I've gone a very similar route here.
I've gone Asava Radicalier.
Okay, I went Jack Payne.
Ah, nice.
So we've gone a pretty similar player. Exactly what you said. A big guy that's going to crash packs.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what they need. They need a key back. I could have said a number of key backs here, but I just went for a guy that's going to go through, put his fist through it, and send the ball to the ground.
And contract expiring.
I actually didn't check that. But yeah, we move to the last one, the West Coast Eagles. Now, I haven't actually said a player here. I've said get Harley Reid on a Supermax 10-year contract, because he can make West Coast Eagles a destination club. That's what I've said. Oh, and I've said Sean Darcy as well.
Oh, okay. I've gone with... I thought Ruckman, because Bailey Williams... It's sort of what I say about Aaron Francis at the Swans. He tries his best, seems like a good bloke, but not very good at footy. Which I don't actually mean. Bailey Williams would love to have you on the pod to dispute that. But he does get dominated in a lot of ruck battles. For West Coast, I've gone Harry Mackay. I think they have a lot of youth up forward, but they don't have a big target up there. Oscar Allen? Injured.
Okay. It's apparently for a game if they'll play tomorrow. We'll move on to the next segment in hits and misses. The umpiring recently is my first miss. More especially this round. I think they're making the game about themselves. Now, the best umpires, refs in any sport are the ones you don't notice. If you don't notice an umpire giving free kicks or making calls, they've had a great game. They've had a great game because they've made the right calls. They haven't got too involved. They've let the game flow. but every second game there seems to be an umpiring flashpoint. Something that the pundits look over after, a 50 that was given, a common sense call that they should have made. Like, there was
that Collingwood one.
The Collingwood... Oh,
that's the ugliest call I've ever seen. I know that's a big superlative.
That's exactly the example I've got here.
Yeah.
That Collingwood free kick. I mean...
It's the example everyone's talking about. That was just... Like... It's just sickening.
They say they're wasting time, but really, 0.2 of a second... He's just given it to Dacos, who's given it to the umpire right there.
The clock was off. The ball still got to the umpire before he was in position.
I couldn't understand. Again, that's 4 points. That's lost because of that decision. Like, we don't know. Maybe they would have come back anyways.
2 points because it was a draw.
2 points. But yeah, and also I've said the McLean 50.
Oh, that was something that was for the Swans.
That was for the Swans, and I just couldn't believe it was. It was in the marking contest.
It was 0.15 of a second.
Really?
After it got into McLean's hands.
But
like when I know he's not in the marking contest, but when his arm's coming through, you can't just say that it's guaranteed that McLean's going to hang on to it cleanly. Like, if McLean fumbles that slightly, then he's made an amazing spoil. Like, and he's committed to that. Like,
but yeah, there's common sense here. There were a few others in the round that I could bring up as well, but we'd be sitting here for hours if we were bringing up all the umpiring flashpoints. But really, very recently, it's just been terrible. It's unfortunate to watch as well. My miss is my by far happiest miss of the season. Okay. And it's Geelong are bad again. Yes, come on. 4 losses in a row. As Aiden made me aware, it's the first time since 2006 that's happened, which is a testament to how successful and consistent they've been as a team. Testament to Chris Scott and what he's done with that team. But gosh, it feels good. I hated the start of this season that Geelong, they were expected again to be on the decline, and they seem to be on the up. But they're bad again. For a couple of weeks, premiership favourites there as well. Yeah, and I don't think that they can recover to be a premiership contending side either, because that midfield's just not strong enough. So the miss is that Geelong are bad again. A happy miss. That's a happy miss. I like it. I'll go into my hit, and it's an interesting hit. I'd say you had your best miss. I probably have my worst hit. And I said Richmond's performance was a hit for me. Okay. Yes, they lost, but I think we saw what a team can do, struggling with form, with a shocking injury list, when they just put in effort. And they put pressure. They can lose by slightly less. No, pressure and winning 50-50s is so important in today's game. And they're hammered with injuries. They haven't got a great team. That's fair enough. But really, it's just like a blueprint for how they can potentially win games. Just putting in as much effort as possible, running, keeping the pressure up the whole game. Just thought for other teams who are struggling down the bottom, North Melbourne, who give up at halfway every game and they're down by 50 points, just keep putting in the effort. That was the 50-50 game plan we saw with Damien Hardwick's Richmond that had their dynasty. Is they were just a team that would just run you out of the pitch. You hate to play against them. Like, I can see what they tried to do. Loads of pressure. They just haven't got the quality to turn that into wins. But yeah, I just thought that was good to see. Fair enough. For my hit, I've gone with the Flaghawks. They are unbelievably good. We saw them do this in the back half of last year, and in our predictions in the preseason, we said we both had Hawthorn a lot higher than they started the year, because they looked so exciting in the back end of last year. Giant killers. We saw that at the end of last year, and we've seen it in this run of 4 games where they've won 3 out of 4. We've seen them beat the Bulldogs. We've seen them beat St Kilda. We've seen them almost beat Port Adelaide last week, who are contenders, and beating Brisbane, who are trying to make a charge towards the 8. So it's so exciting what they do. Their team's so young coach as well, and they're all sort of developing together, and they look so exciting when they're on. That young midfield is so fun to watch between Newcombe, Worpel, Will Day back seems to have given them so much life, and they're I'm going to say, outside of the Swans, they're the most fun team to watch for me in the league right now. I like that. And it was great to see them at the back end of last year coming to a bit of form, and this is exactly what we expected to see. We'll move on to the next segment, the Footy Pyramid. We have 2 outs this week. Matt Rowell is out. Had a quiet game. 15 tackles isn't enough for you. Jake Waterman is out. He had 1 week in the top 15. And he weren't. It's hard to stay there. He was killing it. It's really, really hard to stay in my top 15. But yeah, there are other guys who are having better runs at the moment who deserve to be in this top 15. A lot of good players had great games this week. It was tough to shift them around at the top. Who has to go down, who has to go up. But I think I've figured it out. Staying in the 5th tier, Petrarca. Had a good game. I want to see it again. I do want to see it again. He had a Christian, you heard that. He wants to hear it. He had a bad game last week. I want to see a couple games in a row now if you want to move up in my pyramid. We've got a couple of elite performers above him, and I don't think one game gets you there. Tom Green is going to stay there.
I think he leaves the pyramid.
He was an almost out for me. But I wasn't sure if anyone deserved to come in. He was the next one who was potentially moving out. But he's going to stay in for this week. I have 2 new ins. Nick Blakey is in the pyramid. It's not only what he does with the ball. I'm just starting to see what he's doing without the ball. He had an elite defensive performance against the Dogs on the weekend. I think he deserved to come into my top 15.
I wanted to put him in my top 5 this week. You know he went at 100%.
Yeah, that was another thing I was about to say.
We know how Nick Blakey plays. He's not a half-backman. He's not your Sam Flanders that chips it around the back. He explodes through the corridor, takes on kicks, launches attacks. To go at 100% with 15 kicks and 20 disposals is ridiculous. But yeah, and the way that he defended.
I just think it was time. You don't get into my pyramid having one good performance, but it's been a consistent run. And his only down game in disposals was the game when McCartan got injured and he had to play as the key back. But yeah, he's been electric off halfback this year, and I think he deserves a bit more recognition. Top 15 for me. Sarong, he's got the boot. He's down 2 tiers.
Got the boot?
No, he's down 2 tiers.
To tier 5.
To tier 5. He's moved from tier 3 to tier 5, not because he was awful. He went at like 57% and had 25, 26 touches. But there were guys...
It's just tough.
It was really tough. If you had an off week like that, doesn't matter the touches, he went up 50-odd%. That's what happens. The next new in is Jordan Dawson. He moves in. He's actually had a few good weeks now. He's sort of found his position in this Adelaide team. Really struggled at the start of the at the first couple of rounds of the year, but has really come into his own. We've seen the form that he's had for the last couple of years, and I think he deserves to be in my pyramid.
Agree.
Moving into the 4th tier. Moving down a tier, not because he was bad, but because others excelled. Zach Butters has moved down a tier. He got tagged. He had 2 goals. He had a lot of disposals. It was against North Melbourne.
Okay.
It's tough.
Hey, if someone knows the way
this is what happens. You're going to see who's moved up and taken his spot in a second. Max Gawn holds a spot. He holds a spot in the 4th tier.
That's ridiculous.
Cripps has moved up a tier. Had an elite performance. Good. He's moved up 1 tier. And you know, the mainstay in the 4th tier is Charlie Curnow.
4 goals.
Kicked 4 goals. Also had 4 behinds. It could have been a massive game for him. Moving up into the 3rd tier, Zach Merritt holds a spot. Had a good game, kicked an important goal in the 4th quarter when he ran through from the stoppage. And yeah, another good captain's performance from him. Errol Goulden moves up a tier. He's now in the 3rd tier. And you can say whatever you want about Swans bias, but we're the best team in the league by an absolute mile. We're the best midfield in the league by an absolute mile.
Best percentage by 30%.
And we're absolutely killing it. So I'm giving him a bit more recognition, moving up the pyramid. He's now in the 3rd tier. And joining him in the 3rd tier is Marcus Bontempelli, moving down a tier.
I see what's happening.
And this was really tough. I wasn't sure if I wanted to move him down, but there's a guy who's potentially the 2nd best player in the competition at the moment who deserves to move up. Into the 2nd tier, holding a spot is Nick Dacos.
He's good. He's good at footy.
He is really good at footy, deserves to hold a spot there. Not quite good enough to move up in the 1st place. Joining him in the 2nd tier is Chad Warner, who's moved up 2 tiers.
It's his 2nd week in the pyramid.
And may I just say, he joined the pyramid last week for the first time in the 4th tier. Now he's in the 2nd tier. He's come out absolutely flying in the last couple of weeks. The whole season's been incredible, but last couple of weeks, he's shown the player that we expect him to be. But yeah, he's moved up 2 tiers, top 3 player in the competition, and we know the number 1 is Isaac Heaney. It'll be really tough to dethrone him, even in the last couple of weeks when he's had a couple down weeks. From his first 6 weeks, were the best 6 weeks we've ever seen according to Champion data. He's still been really good. Yeah. Still kicking goals, averaging 25, 26 in the last 5 weeks. And
yeah, massive down week this week with a goal, 23, 7 tackles, 8 clearances.
Exactly.
Really
so it's going to be tough to take him off the top, but yeah, there are now 4 Swans in the top 15, and it's showing on the leaderboard at the moment. Moving to our next segment, and I've been told there's going to be a few changes in the power rankings.
It's become customary to start this segment with a discussion about North Melbourne at 18. They're now suffering dearly from the Melbourne rank crisis with how much time they are spending down in 18. In number 17, similarly, is Richmond, who they are not fighting hard to stay in 18, to battle North Melbourne for 18 anymore.
I think they put a bit of distance between themselves and North Melbourne this week.
I completely agree, and they, as you say, they put together an honourable performance. In 16, you have St Kilda, who I was umming and ahhing as to whether to put them into 17.
Really?
They cannot score. They are awful. They just don't look like they can win a game. They just can't score enough points. Can't put 10 goals together. In 15, I've dropped in a couple places is West Coast. They got hammered by Adelaide. And we know that that's what's going to happen to West Coast, is they're not going to bring the performances every week. They're a young side that's growing, and I think their fans should be happy with the performances.
We've seen development at least, so we're happy with that.
Absolutely. In 14, I have Gold Coast. It's so confusing, the gap between them at home and them away. They've now lost 11 away games in a row.
Now,
and they've won every home game this season.
If they played every single game of the season in Darwin, could they be premiership contenders?
I don't think so. I reckon teams would have to figure them out. But it's really confusing, actually. I don't know how to analyse it. But it's quite baffling. In 13, I have Geelong, and it makes me so glad to put them here. So glad.
Oh, wow. Dropping from 8th.
Yep. It just makes me so happy. Geelong, sit in 13th, buddy. In 12th, I have Brisbane, who got battered by Hawthorn, if we're being honest.
I think they were winning for the first about 5 minutes of the game and then didn't hit the lead again.
Yeah, it's quite confusing that we see these quite dominant displays. They smashed around Gold Coast a few weeks ago. They win by 100 last week. And then, again, when it comes to some competitive games, they just don't seem to have it.
It's because Hipwood was missing today.
Yep, and with the competition around the middle of the table... With the competition around the middle of the table, I don't know how to put them any higher than 12th. In 11th, in 11th and 10th, I'm about to have two huge jumpers.
Okay.
In 11th, I have Adelaide.
I like it.
They're a lot lower than this on the ladder, but I've been saying, I said last week, they seem to play like a fringe top 8 side, but they can't seem to get across the line. Today, they put together a dominant display, and I hope that this is a kickstart for them, because they have an exciting team. I love Jordan Dawson, I like Nixie, and I like watching that team, and I hope that they can improve. In number 10, I have Hawthorn. Absolutely flying. They are playing better than a majority of the teams in the competition. If it was based on the last 4 or 5 weeks, they'd be in the top 4 of this power rankings. They are playing elite footy and deserve this jump into 10th place on the power rankings. In number 9, I have Carlton, who jump a couple spots after their big drop last week. And that the Batman and Robin, Cripps and Walsh, were dominant, and we know they have stars all over the ground. It's can they put it together and actually have a game plan that makes them a dominant team? Yet to be seen. In number 8, I have the Western Bulldogs, who have been playing good footy, but they're 5 and 6. So confusing. 5 and 6, but with 121 percentage.
Did you see that the graphic posted by SCN about who's in their premiership window?
Bulldogs are the only ones alongside the Swans.
Bulldogs are in their premiership window, apparently.
It's top 6 attack, top 6 defence in terms of scoring. Only ones alongside the Swans before this week. Might have stayed there, I'm not sure. But they're a confusing team because pretty much I've looked at every single one of their wins this year has been a big win, I think, by 30 plus points. Every single one of their losses has been by 25 or less. Right. Which you just need to get across the line in those tight games. This is what we've seen Carlton do over the last couple of years, and what we've seen Collingwood do, and it's what you've got to do. In 7th, I have Freo. Need to be able to score more goals, but their defence and midfield is holding up well enough. We saw Collingwood have been absolutely flying, undefeated since the end of round 3, and Fremantle got a draw against them. Showed a lot of fight in that fourth quarter.
Sharp could have kicked straight at the end there.
Heartbreaking. But the fight in that fourth quarter was really, really admirable, and we know that Freo have a solid game plan. They like to chip it around and control the ball, and they seem to do a good job of it against good teams. In 6th place, I have Port, who sit 3rd on the ladder with 8 wins. But I think that we need to see them get a big win against a good team. I think their record against top 8 sides is really, really poor this year and potentially last year as well, compared to where they sat on the table.
Massive game at Adelaide Oval against Carlton on Thursday night.
That'll be a huge test. We haven't seen them put up a really strong display against a good team this year at all, I think. In 5th, the top 5... I'll run through them because I've got the top 5 staying the same as last week. I've got Essendon in 5th, who I think compared to how they were expected to perform against Richmond, underperformed, but they got the win in Dreamtime. In 4th, I have GWS, who I think I had a lot higher than others would have had them. I saw Fox Footy has their power rankings and they had GWS in 11th, and I had them in 4th last week. The reason I had them in 4th is even though their form deserves to have them in 11th or lower, I know that this team's going to bounce back. They are star-studded everywhere. Adam Kingsley, I think, is a good coach that can send them to a premiership possibly, and it's just a matter of time. And they showed that against Geelong this week with a clutch win. In 3rd, I have Melbourne, who bounced back from their loss against West Coast. In 2nd, I have Collingwood, who keep their spot despite the draw because they are undefeated since the end of round 3. I think it's deserved. And in number 1, Sydney, who are pretty much unmatched there. And that's my power rankings.